Hi everyone, this is Aaron for Zollotech, and we're going to compare the Microsoft Surface RT to the iPad. Both of these are really nice tablets, but I want to try and help you decide which one to buy and which one would work best for you. The first thing we're going to talk about is the actual price. We have a few different options. As for the RT, it comes with 32 gigabytes with no accessories. There's an extra cover that will go with it. We'll talk about later with a keyboard on it. So without any accessories, 32 gigabytes, it comes in at $499. If you want a 32 gigabyte with a touch cover, it's $599, and then you can get a 64 gigabyte with a touch cover for $699. That's all the choices you get for the Surface. You can change up the keyboard. It adds a little bit of cost here and there, but for the most part, that's the price. As for the iPad, we have 3 different variants and then 3 more variants. So you have different size-wise. You have 16, 32, and 64 gigabyte models with Wi-Fi only, and those come in at $499, $599, and $699. If you'd like to add a 3G, 4G model with LTE and all the different radios for the rest of the world, you can get those for an additional $129 on top of those prices. So again, 16, 32, 64 gigabytes, add $129. So $599 plus $129, or $699 plus $129, and so on. So you can see that both of them can get rather expensive at the high end. There is no 3G option for the Surface. The design of the Surface and the iPad are very different. While they're both high-quality materials, the Surface is really designed to be used in landscape, where the iPad is more designed to be used in portrait. Both of them support rotation, and you can use them in either or, but they seem to be more comfortable in these particular layouts. The Surface is high quality. It's got Gorilla Glass on the front, and it's very strong. The back is made out of Vapomag, or magnesium, that Microsoft has made, and we have a plastic strip here on the top. The magnesium feels sort of like plastic in some ways, but it feels high quality. Most people I've handed this to say, wow, that's really high quality. It also has a built-in kickstand to allow it to stand up and use it with the type cover or just view it with movies, all built into the design. It's more industrial, I think, than the iPad. It just feels more like it's meant to get work done as far as the design itself. With the buttons here on the side, we have a volume up, down, our microphone, speaker, flip it to the bottom. We've got our connector for the dock or the keyboard dock. We've got a MagSafe type connector for power, USB, HDMI out, another speaker. We also have a micro SD slot under here for expandable memory. You can see we have a camera on the back. On the top, we have a microphone, power on, sleep wake button, and on the front, not really anything other than the camera on the front. On the iPad, most people are going to be pretty familiar with it. We have the home button, camera on the front. If we flip it over, we have a camera on the back, volume rocker, rotate or vibrate switch, or silent switch rather in this case, sleep wake button, power, microphone, headphone jack, and this is the 3rd generation iPad. The 4th gen basically just swaps the connector and changes some specs inside. The speakers here, as you can see. So design-wise, very different, and the back is a little shiny. It has a skin on it. But both are very nice devices, just a little bit different in the design aspect. One feels more like you want to get work done on it, honestly. One feels more like it's a book reading or web browsing type device. That's just the overall take on it. That's not necessarily true for either of them. When it comes to the specs of the Surface and the iPad, they both have pretty impressive specs. We're going to focus on the iPad 4th generation specs as opposed to the 3rd generation that I have here, because they're basically form factor-wise the same, but some of the internals and the connector are different. The Surface has a really nice display on it. It's not quite as high-res as the Retina display, but it is a 10.6-inch 1366 by 768 display with 139 pixels per inch. The iPad has a 9.7-inch IPS LED display with a 2048 by 1536 display with 264 pixels per inch. Pretty impressive in both. What powers those is an A6 Apple or A6X Apple processor in the iPad, where the Surface has an NVIDIA Tegra 3 processor. Both seem to be very fast and responsive, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But we both have 1 gigabyte of RAM inside of them. The iPad does. The Surface seems to be as fast as well. As for the cameras on both of them, as you can see on the front, we have a 720p camera front and back on the Surface. They don't really go into specs, they just say 720p. On the iPad, though, we do have a 5 megapixel camera on the back that's coming out of the iPhone 4 with a little bit different lens on it and takes pretty good pictures. The iPhone camera is really good, and that translates to the iPad. The cameras in the Surface are pretty poor, actually, and are good for pretty much just video chat and that sort of thing. You really wouldn't want to take any really nice pictures with it. The front camera on the iPad is just a VGA 30 frame per second camera. Nothing great, but again, it's for video chat for the most part. The iPad does come with GPS in it if you get the version that has the 3G and 4G antennas built into them together. It comes with the extra GPS. You don't have that option on the Surface. You also have a bunch of different sensors such as light and accelerometers and compass and gyroscope in both. You have an HDMI out on the Surface, like I mentioned before. You only have AirPlay options through an Apple TV. You do have an option to go out through the dock connector or the Lightning connector with an extra cable. The Surface has a USB port in the side, like I mentioned before, and expandable memory. That's also a really nice feature. And we have Bluetooth in both of them as well. The iPad has Bluetooth 4.0, while the Surface has Bluetooth, and we really don't know necessary specifics. It just has Bluetooth. We also have Wi-Fi 802.11 BGN in both devices. We also have a dual MIMO antenna in the Surface, which should be pretty good for speeds, and has proven to be over time. Size-wise or weight-wise, the Surface is 1.14 pounds. The iPad is 1.33 pounds. Both of them have pretty impressive battery life. I get about 10 hours out of both, but specifically we have a 42.5 watt-hour battery in the iPad, while the Surface has an 8200 milliamp hour battery. So pretty impressive there. As far as the overall OS, we have iOS 6 on the iPad. We have Windows RT on the Surface. Now, the software on both of these devices is quite good. Initial impressions of the Windows RT tablet from some reviews I saw said that it was slow and buggy. And since those reviews have come out, I've actually used this for about a week and have found that the updates that have been applied since then have really added to stability. I really haven't had too many issues with it, and things seem to be pretty fast. In fact, just about everybody I've shown says it feels really fast. That's about 95% of the time. The iPad feels very fast as well, and I would say they're pretty much on par as far as the overall feel of the experience. However, Windows RT does have some limitations. The only thing you can do with it as far as applications go is install from the App Store. And while on iOS that's not a problem because that's how it's always been with the iPad, and there's hundreds of thousands of apps, that's just not the case yet for Windows RT. When the Windows Surface Pro tablet comes out, or Microsoft Surface Pro comes out, it'll actually run the full version of Windows 8, which is meant to run just about any program you've had in the past. Should run on it pretty well, or in theory anyway. Here we have the store. We'll open both stores here, and that was something I was just trying to look at, a real estate app. Go to the featured sections. Here we slide up, and we're already home. I was going to go home, but you can see this is the home screen, and everything's left to right on the Surface. Everything's kind of up and down on the iPad for the most part, and it kind of gives you a hint on the Surface that everything's to the right a little bit. Just keep scrolling. And you've got different spotlights, just like you have here. This is more minimalistic. As you can tell, the interface is more tiles, And as far as the store is concerned, there's just not that many apps. There are some essentials such as Netflix and Skype, even remote desktop. You have some games like Angry Birds Space and Jetpack Joyride, everything that you can find on the iPad. You also have, like I said, Skype. Can keep going. You have some things like Nick and Disney Princess and iHeartRadio, ESPN. There are a lot of apps, and it seems to be growing pretty rapidly, actually, a lot more so than I think a lot of people give it credit for. And I've found it to be a pretty enjoyable experience on the Surface. But there are things missing, such as maybe Flipboard that a lot of people like, maybe some news readers like Pulse, but there are some decent alternatives. You can see eBay is here, and they're pretty decent apps as well. Office, things like that come with it. Let's go back home. And you can see the minimalistic tile interface. Pretty much everyone at this point knows what they're getting with an iPad. You have an interface with a bunch of icons. Touch them, open the app, hit the home button, close the app. Want to switch quickly between an app? Double tap the home button and switch. With the Surface, it's a little bit different. Here you can see we have live tiles, and these tiles are updating information all the time. You can see it says Toys R Us, it's some email I've received. Here's the weather from the Weather Channel. Here's my schedule. There's somebody's birthday tomorrow. You can see there's some photos rotating here, updating news, updating travel, updating people. This is actually taking my feed from Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, and combining them all in one and rolling them in front of me. Same with music. It does the same thing. If I was playing a song, it would roll the picture of the song while I'm here. Windows RT also does another interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people give it enough credit for. You can have two windows open at once. So let's go to Internet Explorer. We'll go to zollotech here. And the keyboard's not popping up. So you can see it may be looking for the keyboard. I'm not sure why it's not doing that. So I've never had this happen before, but let's go to Google. We'll load the web page here. You can see it went to Google. And I can't really go anywhere because of that. That's pretty interesting. Keyboard's not popping up. I did have the keyboard dock on it earlier. But the web browser itself seems to be pretty fast, and if we want to go into something else, we can slide in from the left. We were just in the store. Store's right there. We can resize it here. And my favorite part that I was hoping to show you was, and now the store's not loading, so oh well. But one of my favorite things is I tested out how powerful this was. And what I did is I played a video from YouTube in one side while I was playing Netflix in the other. Both at the same time, both running, audio overlapping and everything, and it worked just fine. I could resize like this, it would resize. I can bring in another app like this. There's Xbox. Resize again, bring in another app. So it's pretty interesting the things you can do with it. I actually really like it. It's just a different take on everything. I still think it's pretty intuitive, but it takes learning where you have to slide in your thumb, hit start, go back. I mean, there are other ways to do things, but this is how you do most of them. There's a task manager. You slide out, slide back. See that again? It's a really nice interface, but it takes some learning. Everything's swiped from the side or top to bottom. And it's not a bad thing. It's just something new. It's more progress focused or productive focused than I think the iPad is. The iPad is a little bit more consumer focused, which isn't a bad thing. It's very simplistic, but it doesn't have the learning curve that the Surface does, and that may appeal or not appeal to you. An example I would have is I've handed the Surface to a lot of people, and a lot of people don't know this is actually a home button too. You can swap back and forth to what you were in last just by hitting it. You can do the same here. A lot of ways to do the same thing twice, mostly like most versions of Windows. And I gave the Surface to someone, just handed it to him and said, here, try this out. They quickly tapped on an icon. It opened up. Let me show you weather. It opened up, gave them the weather, and I said, okay, get back. And they didn't know how. And now it does give a quick video in the beginning, but for anyone that's not tech-oriented, that doesn't watch tutorials in those things, it's going to be a little bit confusing and require a little bit of learning before they do any of the actual use of this. So you can see I can slide in Smart Glass. For Xbox, slide it over, and you can see things are resizing like I expected before. So a little bit different. Again, here's the Weather Channel on The iPad, you open it, there is no double apps, and that's probably what I enjoy personally about the Surface the most. But both are nice, and both seem to work well, with the exception of that keyboard bug you just saw there. Apps are getting better on the Surface and will continue to get better as Surface appeal grows. It's going to be difficult to tell how fast those apps will come in at, but there seems to be a sufficient number of apps at the moment, unless you're looking for something specifically. We also have Word and Excel. But again, with RT, you can only install from the App Store. You cannot install from something else because it's ARM-based only, based on the processor. Again, on the iPad, we have a ton of apps that you can see here, a ton of different apps, hundreds of thousands of apps specifically for the iPad. And most apps you would want will be here. So that's going to be something to consider depending on what you're looking for. Accessories on both devices are pretty varied. On the Surface, Microsoft offered a couple of its own, and one of those is the touch cover, which is a keyboard and a great accessory. It either comes with the bundle or it doesn't, but it's a touch keyboard and actually works really well. It's odd to type on it because the keys don't depress, but it's pretty responsive, and it clicks in. Let me show you. You can see it clicks in firmly. That's one thing Microsoft has really touted in the commercials and other things as well. And then we can stand it up, and we have a full keyboard to type on. It works really well and really fast. When you close it up, it also protects it. You can see it's got this kind of velour type feel to it, or fur type feel, real thin fur, maybe like a car seat type material. When you open it, it turns on. When you close it, it shuts off. It works really well that way. They also offer a type cover which has depressible keys as well, and that's nice and works just as well if you want more tactile feel when you're typing. Both of them work well. They don't require any batteries, and they just click into the bottom. They're about $100, $129, depending on which one you get, and are a really nice accessory. There are some other accessories for the Surface, but not a whole lot, especially compared to the iPad. One of the few Apple accessories that they make specifically for the iPad are these cases or covers. This is the smart cover. You may have seen it. It clicks onto the side magnetically. When you close it, shuts the iPad off. Open it, turns it back on. Same deal with this. This is the smart case or smart case, and the iPad sits in here, protects the back, and again closes. This cover is about $60. The smart cover is about $40, so both pretty expensive, as is the keyboard on the Microsoft Surface. As far as accessories go for the iPad, there are a lot more accessories for the iPad, especially if you have the older dock connector as I do on this one. You're going to find a ton of accessories, and probably pretty inexpensive now since they're switching to the Lightning adapter. People are making accessories for the Lightning adapter, iPads and iPhones, but there'll be plenty left behind for the old adapter for quite some time. The Surface does have some accessories, but it's pretty slow going at this point. There's some sleeves, some protective screen protectors, shields, things like that. You're definitely going to find a lot more accessories for the iPad. One of the apps I'd like to compare or show you is the web browsers. Since that's where a lot of people will spend their time, I thought I'd show you Internet Explorer and Safari, the default web browsers that come with each device. Neither of them fully support Flash. In fact, Internet Explorer supports Flash on the Windows RT Surface only on approved Microsoft sites, such as CNET. That would be an example of one. Not every site. Where they come up with the specific list, I'm not sure, but I wanted to show you zollotech. So let's open those up. And I've got the keyboard working now. So there's zollotech. Let me type it in over here. We're on the same Wi-Fi, but you still should get a general idea of how good it is. And here we go. They're both loading. You can see the iPad loaded a little bit differently than the Surface. They're both done at about the same time. Let me show you scrolling. You can see the Surface is a little bit jaggy for some reason. Pinch to zoom seems to work really fast. A little bit buggy for some reason on the Surface. Double tap to bring up where you want. To read it a little better, same thing. zoom back out, and both screens, even though the Surface is a little bit lower res, both screens seem to look just fine. If we can go to, I guess, the Windows Phone 8X, go there at the same time. You can see they loaded about the same speed. They're close enough to one another. Both of them will play the video in the browser, and it works well. I have had Internet Explorer crash on me a couple times, but that doesn't mean I've never had Safari crash on me either. You can see we'll go back home. And that's the web browser. They both work really well, and I think the Internet Explorer is pretty sufficient, although it would be nice to have a lot of different choices like Chrome and Firefox working specifically in the App Store. One of the other applications that people will be in a lot is Mail. And Mail on the Surface is a little bit lacking, but it's pretty early on. On the iPad, it seems to do a pretty good job. But let me open that up for you. There's Mail on the Surface. I haven't found a way to actually change the color, so it is what it is. And you can see down here I have Hotmail and Gmail. I haven't found a way, or I haven't even read online a way, where you can combine inboxes yet. I can't imagine that this will be a permanent thing for the Surface, but as of right now, that's what it is. Pretty clean interface, though. If I want to delete something, I can simply delete it, and it goes to the next one. It's a little bit clunky as far as the email goes, but it will get better, I'm sure, in the future. Email on the iPad is pretty decent. I'll open up email. Here's that same exact email I got for Jelly Belly Jelly Beans Black Friday sale. Again, same pinch to zoom, and we don't have the sidebar unless we rotate the iPad, which we could do, or we can hit this button here and pick all of our inboxes or whatever we want to use. So it's a little bit easier to see all of your email at once on the iPad as opposed to on the Surface, but hopefully that will change over time. The future of these devices seems pretty certain for right now. Both of them have big companies behind them. The Surface has Microsoft all in on the new tile outlay of Windows RT and Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. You can see the iPad looks like an iPad and an iPhone, and Apple's all in on iOS. There's plenty of support on the iOS side, a little bit lacking, or it would so seem that way on the Surface. But pushing forward, I can't imagine that anyone would drop support for these anytime soon. The Surface seems like it should be around for a while. The Surface Pro is coming out after 2013, in the early 2013, so Microsoft says, and both should have a pretty good support base by then. I think both are excellent tablets. If you're looking for more apps, you definitely want to go with the iPad right now, or possibly a cheaper device. You want to go with the iPad. You can get a refurbished one from Apple for a fraction of the price with the same warranty. The Surface you can get on eBay for about the same price as you can buy it brand new, but it's only been out a short amount of time. Only time will tell how the Surface stacks up against the iPad as far as how many people buy it and what kind of support it gets. But you definitely feel with the keyboard that you can get a little bit more done on the Surface, especially with the widescreen, in my opinion. I do like, personally, I do like the way the Surface works as far as being able to watch a video and type on Word or surf the web using the keyboard. However, I do like the way the iPad feels better in the hand. Both feel equally sturdy to me, and personally, I'm torn between the two. Most of the apps I use are on both, but there are some that are only on the iPad that I use, such as financial apps and Flipboard. Those are some pretty important apps to me. The final factor for you probably would be what phone and what computer you're using. If you're heavily involved with Apple products, you're probably going to want to stay with Apple. Same goes for Microsoft. This works pretty seamlessly with Windows 8, even Windows 7 if you need to plug something into it in Windows Phone 8. It's definitely worth checking out both before you buy them if you can get your hands on a Surface, as they're only available in Microsoft stores and online right now. I would love to hear what you have to say about each device. As I said, I think they're both great devices, but it's always interesting to hear what you have to say. And if you have any questions about each device or either device, please place those in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to this channel already, please go ahead and hit subscribe. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.